Let's go now to Scott Lucas. He's a professor of international politics at Birmingham University in the UK. So Scott, as you know, this case has been watched with such fascination for years, including in the form of documentaries and movies now. But what effect would you say this has had on the high-flying biotech startup industry?
Well, let me divide this into two parts. And I think one part, your correspondent put it well, which is this case came to be represented by celebrity, hype, and hustle. And it did.
Right.
I mean, it was one of those basically, made for TV trials. Elizabeth Holmes, very dynamic, charismatic, who had co-founded this company at the age of 19, dropping out of Stanford University. And then, the youngest American female billionaire. But the other side, which is the serious side, that kind of gets lost. And that is, we're not just talking about Silicon Valley and technology and startup companies, although that's a very important issue. We're talking about a specific here, which was a technology company promising an advance for people regarding their health care, specifically the testing of blood that could quickly detect a series of important conditions, the idea that you could save lives with early diagnosis. And that, I think, is really the serious point about this. There are many startups that rise and that fail. There are some startups that may skate close to the line in terms of what they promise. But in this case, when Holmes went to investors and said, we have the technology to actually deliver to people these life-saving advances, well, according to the jury, and therefore the court, she overstated her case. And by overstating her case, I find that significant. We're in the middle of a pandemic where we really need medical technology to help us get to the other side of it.
Right, and I find this mixed bag verdict very interesting, that she was convicted of defrauding investors, but not the patients.
Again, it's hard to really define this in a 3-minute interview, but I think the crux of this is in terms of proximity. And that is, in terms of proximity, Elizabeth Holmes wasn't talking to patients directly on a day-to-day basis. She was talking to Forbes magazine. She was hanging out with Bill Clinton and Henry Kissinger. And most importantly, her proximity was not to patients, but to investors, to those people who directly put money into her company. And while I think we can make an argument that, yes, potentially patients were deceived over this, people may have gotten false hope about what this meant for their medical care, Holmes wasn't dealing with them. She was dealing with the money people. And that really is the legal crux of why you could convict her, or why the jury at least could find her guilty on those charges, but not on the others.
And I think what this lays bare extends well beyond this industry, that when you get one extremely respected person on your board, that just adds a stamp of approval, and then more people of the same caliber come on board and more people trust it. The same thing with the investors as well as the claims. It's like, if you can get one big publication to put you on its cover, it's like this credence spreads far and wide, and nobody wants to be the doubter.
Look, this is not new. I mean, I'm an old fella, and in the 20th century, before this internet thing and before Silicon Valley, the game was the same. You want to promote a business, you play the public relations game, and the public relations game turns on, to take us back to the start of the interview, celebrity, the VIPs who are on there. And Elizabeth Holmes got that side of it right in a 21st century environment, and this is what is different, when we are talking not only about high tech, but about knowing about it almost immediately. I think what this means is that while the game has not changed, you try to get the important people on board, the stakes are higher in terms of reliability. We're not just talking about making money. We're not just talking about celebrity. We are talking about the fact that at a critical moment in the 21st century, you need to not only talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk and be able to deliver. And having a few names on your board doesn't work, especially when you're making claims that you can't back up.
Yeah, and it's so difficult when now people doubt science concerning COVID-19. And this is one of those cases where people should have been doubting more, and it just muddies up the whole thing, because you know what? Nobody understands the science except for those practicing it. Scott, thanks so much for your insight, as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.